Hi, Kane here. On behalf of Dr. Rangel and I at Innate Medicine, I wanted to share a few tips with you on how to keep yourself and your family healthy during this fire season. The air is particularly poor right now throughout the Bay Area and all up and down the West Coast. So I wanted to share some things that you can do at home to benefit your lungs, your large intestine, and keep your whole system able to respond to this environment and draw upon your innate resilience to help you. So let's start with food. Probably the most simple thing that you can do to benefit your lungs and your large intestine during this time is to eat savory soups, light, clear, savory soups. So using celery would be great in a light savory soup, like a celery and carrot soup. But I wanted to introduce the daikon. For some of you, it's probably a new ingredient. Some of you maybe have already cooked with it. This is daikon radish. Daikon radish is traditional for removing excess heat from the body. So making a soup with celery and daikon radish would be great. You can also draw upon some of the medicinal mushrooms that are available in farmers markets or at health food stores. You can either use them fresh or dry, and you can include them in your savory soup or just add them into other recipes that you're already making. These are shiitake mushrooms. So shiitake and maitake would be two great choices for mushrooms. And then if you have a Chinatown, Japantown, or Asian market in your area, you can get wood ear mushrooms. There's white wood ear mushrooms and black wood ear mushrooms. Both of those would be really great for the lungs and helpful for the immune system. Two other ingredients that we can incorporate in that soup or in our cooking in general are seaweed. So this is the nori seaweed, the raw seaweed that's used for sushi, and this is kombu. A little bit of kombu would go a long way, probably a piece about like that size in a whole pot of soup would be enough. The seaweeds will help us absorb micronutrients, and seaweed is also cooling, so it helps the body deal with heat and particularly toxic heat from the ashes that are in the air during the fire season. Something else you can do is you can alternate making miso soup for one day or one set of meals, and then do like a clear savory soup. So this is a white miso. You can mix that miso up in a suribachi, or you could just take the miso, put it in a jar, put a top on that with some warm water, and just shake it up to break up the miso to make a really quick and simple miso soup. Dilute that with water. You can add in a little bit of your seaweed, a little bit of tofu. So just some really simple ways. It doesn't have to be a big ordeal to make these soups, but you'd want to have about, a small bowl of soup with ideally every meal, if not every meal, at least twice a day, so that you're bringing in that easy to digest and absorb nutrition that will help harmonize the other foods that you're eating, which will lubricate the large intestine and irrigate all the tissues of the body. This helps us deal with an environment that's got a little bit more toxicity than we're used to. A couple of other things, so in between meals, not really taken with your large meals, we can add in fruit in the pear family. This is an Asian pear, and that would be traditionally drank with green tea as a way of, again, lubricating the lungs, lubricating the large intestine, keeping the bowels moving, and helping to cool the body and detoxify the blood. So as a snack, you could do like a loose leaf green tea. Again, in traditional classic Chinese medicine, we would use something that has a flower in it during the season because it's a little more cooling and calming. So this is jasmine green tea pearls. So there are jasmine petals rolled in with green tea leaves. You could use that if you have that in loose leaf. If not, you can find it in tea bags also at health food stores or good grocery stores. Another option would be to actually consume the green tea leaf itself in powder form. So this is powdered matcha, and that powdered green tea can be whisked up if you have a whisk and a bowl at home, traditional style. If not, you can find matcha at health food stores, put it in a jar with water under boiling temperature, like 175, close the top and just shake vigorously that jar and then pour it into your teacup. It's a quick and easy way to drink green tea and actually ingest the leaves so you get some of that extra antioxidant power in the tea. Also, the green tea is cooling and detoxifying, so that helps to counteract fire season dryness and those ashes that are in the air. Another thing we can do in the kitchen is to prepare kanjis, to make grains into a soupy porridge and to eat that for breakfast. So traditionally millet and rice would be used. So a very simple recipe is half a cup of rice, short grain rice, and about 9 or 10 cups of water, some salt, and then boil that for about an hour. You can go all the way up to 2 hours and it'll make a nice light porridge where the broth absorbs a lot of those micronutrients from the rice, makes the whole meal very easy to digest and assimilate. But what we're trying to do with that is we're trying to get irrigated at the deep level of our tissues. So that will benefit our lungs, benefit our large intestine, keep the body hydrated, and keep the bowels moving. You could do the same thing with millet. You could also use a similar idea if you're used to using oatmeal. Just do oatmeal like steel cut oats, but make it soupy, so add a lot more water. Let's move over to this section. So outside of the kitchen, some self-care things that we can do to help facilitate the health of the lungs by keeping the openings of the airways clean and refreshed. And that's going to be the use of our Neti Pot. So what we would do is, the recipe is 1 teaspoon of sea salt to 16 ounces of warm water. So you mix that up in a container. That's enough to fill your Neti Pot twice. And the reason you want to do that is you want to fill your Neti Pot up and do from right to left, and then fill it up the second time, do from left to right, so that you're cleansing the nostrils in both directions. Neti Pot, usually we do it in the morning time before breakfast. When there's so much particulate in the air and the smoke is so heavy, you could do it twice a day. So I would do it once in the morning and then once like in the mid-afternoon, like 1 or 2 p.m. You just want to make sure not to do Neti Pot too close to bed. You don't want to go to bed with any water that might be stuck in those cavities as you lie down. So just make sure you have at least about 3 hours after doing Neti Pot before you lie down. Another thing that we can do during this time is to facilitate the movement of our lymph. So those lymph nodes here in the neck, in the chest, in the underarms, using a dry brush is really great for that. So we just dry brush the whole body from the exterior toward the heart, from the feet toward the heart, from the arms toward the heart, and just enough to pink up the skin. That's going to help create microcirculation in the body and move the lymph. If you don't have a dry brush, they're easy to get. This one we got online. It's Bernard Jensen products. It's all natural. They make a really good one. If you don't have one of those and you want to just start doing dry brushing, you can use a rough towel or a bathing mitt. And that's the same idea. You would put your hand inside of this one and do the dry brushing or the scrubbing, or you can use a dry, rough towel that you have around the house. You can wet it and then dry it outside in the air so that it gets a little bit stiff, and that's enough to dry brush the body as well. Okay, so now let's talk exercise. So obviously it's important to stay inside when the air quality is poor, but we want to avoid getting stagnant. So when we stay inside, we walk less and we tend to sit more. That causes stagnation in the lymph nodes and it causes blood stagnation, and that's no good for our lungs, our intestines, or our heart. So the name of the game with exercise right now is to do short periods of gentle movement throughout the day versus, a long intense session of exercise in one part of the day, or even skipping numerous days and just doing exercise once in a while. We need to be moving a little bit throughout the day. So I'd recommend do like 15 minutes of yoga stretching, and then a little later in the day do some qigong movements. A little later in the day, put on some music that you like and get dancing, get the whole family up and moving. When you go to the kitchen to make your tea, do 20 squats. And so throughout the day, just get little periods of movement to keep your blood circulating and to keep that lymph active and moving. So these are some things that are really important, because what we're trying to do here is to be on top of the effect that happens when we have an increase of particulate in the air and a decrease of movement and access to fresh air for being inside. So it's important to be on top of it. Even if you have no symptoms, or you don't feel like the air quality is affecting you at all, doing these things and incorporating them into your daily habits is going to be really important for maintaining and securing your health and the health of your family. So just a quick recap. We've got savory light soups as a way to get that nutrition into the body and keep circulation of fluids and keep hydrated. We have a few key ingredients that will really be beneficial during this time: shiitake mushrooms, the seaweeds, miso, use of 2 different types of green tea, and anything in the pear family. You don't need to eat a lot of fruit, like a half of a pear with your tea would be plenty. And then we've got all the self-care stuff, neti, and the use of the dry brushing to keep the lymph moving. And then be on top of your exercise. Don't go a day, don't go half a day without getting some movement in. If you're at home, as many of us are, working on the computer, doing Zoom calls, or on the phone, you're tending to sit a lot, set a timer. About every 90 minutes, get up and do some movement, 5-10 minutes of movement, and keep that happening throughout the day. And last is to make sure that you're sleeping well. So there's a little bit of extra stress and some uncertainty. We don't know where the fire patterns are going. So this puts a little extra stress. It's emotionally challenging and mentally taxing. So we have to take care of our mind, our body, and our spirit. Practicing a little bit of meditation throughout the day and making sure you get a good night's sleep. All of those things are going to be really important during the next few weeks as we get through this fire season. Okay, lots of love, lots of support, sending you all the best from Dr. Rangel and I. Take care.